Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has become one of the biggest video games of all time. In spite of only being around for 3 years, it's already made an unforgettable impact in the landscape of gaming. From the robust gameplay to the massive amount of content to the giant selection of stages, to most importantly, the massive roster of fighters you can choose from. And not just the huge roster, but the characters featured within. Smash Bros. Has practically become a revolutionary game franchise, with Nintendo's ability to cooperate with other companies to include guest fighters from a wide library of other franchises into this all-star brawl. One of the most exciting things about Smash Ultimate was definitely the reveal trailers, where everyone is at the edge of their seat to see who's gonna be the next fighter. Pretty much all the reveals for this game have had a wide variety of reactions, from overwhelming joy to overwhelming rage. These reveals aren't just DLC trailers, they're huge events that grab everyone's attention across the furthest reaches of the internet. But which reveals were the best ones? Which trailers built up the most anticipation, the most excitement, and received the best reactions when they appeared? Well, this list is going to explore just that, so grab a snack and take a seat as we look over which epic reveals left the greatest impact. This is the top 5 Smash Ultimate reveals. I've never really played Persona 5 or really got into the series, but I'll admit the series is pretty iconic, especially Persona 5. With its slick anime-esque art style, addicting soundtrack, and strong presence, it's pretty easy to recognize even if you've never played it. So imagine people's excitement when Joker was revealed to be the first guest fighter. I think what I like most about this one is how it completely catches you off guard in what it's presenting. It doesn't open with the classic Smash symbol with the zoom in on the fire, it instead starts with a TV static and a clear heads up that you're seeing something Persona 5 related. It really works at surprising you while still keeping you enticed in what it's promoting. The soundtrack kicks in as our hero starts running to an uncertain destination with his teammates questioning what kind of secret mission he could be going on. The anticipation builds up until finally, we see that classic invitation to Smash. We then see a battlefield of smoke as the fog takes form of various fighters, and a sudden transition to black. Joker slowly reveals his persona. It calls upon the challenge of anyone standing in their way, and it ends with an eerie fade-out, with Joker's name flashing before the viewer. This reveal is beautifully paced, from the build-up creating suspense, to the excitement of the final reveal, to the transition between scenes, and giving us a fun little demonstration of Joker's presence in the game. And without a doubt, the animation is flawless. The people who worked on this really deserve a raise because they put their A-game into this trailer. It stays pretty faithful to the art style of the original game while doing some really creative stuff with its atmosphere. People love this trailer, and they really couldn't wait for a chance to play as Joker themselves. Unfortunately, they had to wait a little bit as some idiot at Nintendo decided to initiate maintenance for their servers. But even with this minor setback, this was very well presented. With its slick animation, smooth pace, surprising off-guard reveal, and catchy music, this reveal would set the bar for many other trailers to come. After the disaster that was Nuts and Bolts, the Banjo-Kazooie franchise ended up going dormant and silent for a very long time. For years, the fans have been begging for the industry to show some love for the iconic duo. So imagine their surprise and overwhelming happiness when it was revealed they were making a stunning entrance in Smash. With the King K. Rool trailer receiving a lot of love, it only made sense to try it out again. The 3 Donkey Kong fighters are relaxing in the jungle when a mysterious figure approaches the treehouse, revealing... Yep, a classic fake-out just like last time. And then Banjo and Kazooie actually show up. We then get a huge montage of what the two will be like to play as, with a remix of Spyro Mountain playing in the background. It's an excellent presentation with their entire moveset perfectly capturing the feel and style of their moveset from the original games. Top it off with a reference to Gruntilla's defeat, and Banjo and Kazooie scoring a victory pose, and you got yourself a fantastic finish. This trailer is a joy to watch. Just seeing the iconic duo not only getting more recognition, but also making an appearance in one of the biggest video games of all time is practically a dream come true. It's also great to see the DK characters just as excited and overjoyed as we are to see them in the game, seeing their old Rare companions making a historic comeback. On top of that, this feels like an addition to the roster that everyone can enjoy. It wasn't anime, it wasn't something oversaturated like Undertale or Minecraft, and it wasn't both in the case of another FE character. What else can you say except, it's great to have these two back. It was a fun trailer with great representation as well as a welcome return for our favorite Bear Bird duo. The 2020 Game Awards was abysmal. It's really no secret that they're just the video game equivalent to the Oscars, a shitty award show run by elitists in the industry who don't know how to properly recognize good video games, and only seem to overshower games that cater to their crappy art school brat mindset. This was most evident by the fact the 2020 show was just an excuse for the industry to circle jerk over Neil Druckmann's glorified edgelord fanfiction that painted the psychotic pregnant woman throat slitter as the victim. A lot of people have talked about this already, so I don't believe I need to go into it. For a moment it seemed like nothing worthwhile was going to come out of this event. But then, my god, here comes Sephiroth with a steel chair! What makes this trailer such a surprise is that it was unexpected and very unlikely that they would be able to get another Square Enix character in the roster. With the inclusion of Cloud and Hero and knowing how picky Square can be with their licenses, it was certainly shocking to see Sephiroth make an entrance. Though it does kinda make sense with all the memes about him being a creepy stalker who follows Cloud everywhere.
You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
The trailer shows everyone ready to face off against Galeem when a mysterious figure slices him clean in half, catching everyone by surprise. Who could have been so powerful to one-shot Galeem? This was answered with a brief moment of silence followed by that iconic, ominous horn. The slow build-up and suspenseful reveal of him is perfect, as it proceeds to demonstrate the colossal power he'll be bringing to Smash. He completely dominates the entire roster, with Cloud being the only one left to face him. And just before it ends, he reveals his iconic final form, teasing his final smash. Even if you're not into Final Fantasy VII, you know that iconic theme means something big is about to happen. Sephiroth's addition was a really big deal and it made people excited for a chance to recreate the legendary fight between him and Cloud in Smash form. The atmosphere is enjoyably ominous, the build-up to Sephiroth's reveal is great, and it portrays his cosmic power and unstoppable force perfectly, making this trailer a great memory.
私は思い出にはならないさ。
If there's one thing we can all agree on, Minecraft is a really popular game. From its incredibly large community, to the gaming channels that rank millions upon millions of views just by making a video on it, it's quite a phenomenon in spite of its simplicity. So you can imagine how badly Sakurai broke the internet when Steve was announced as a guest fighter. We see a usual fight take place as Mario is knocked off screen into a mysterious place. He hears an eerie sound with mysterious glowing eyes surrounding him. And then a mysterious figure breaks through the wall, and it's none other than Steve himself. An awkward moment of silence follows as Mario just stares at him, just before Steve retreats at the sight of an exploding zombie, following a gameplay compilation featuring his playstyle, as well as revealing how Alex is joining the fight too. But it's not over yet, because then it's revealed that Zombie and Enderman are also joining the fight. If you're a huge fan of Minecraft, chances are you had a huge blast with this trailer. And even if you're not, this reveal has plenty to like. It has an all-around cheerful mood with the lighthearted music playing to the demonstration of Steve's moveset. They make it a lot of fun to watch as the many possible actions in Minecraft are properly incorporated into his moveset. They even gave a really good demonstration of the stage, showing how the atmosphere can come in 4 different varieties with the changing seasons. It also has a good sense of humor with that awkward silence between Mario and Steve right before he retreats from the cave and Mario gets blown up. And the character's sense of humor is shown to be faithfully carried into the gameplay. This was an incredibly shocking reveal, and one that was met with a lot of praise and love. Seeing 2 of the biggest mascots in video games finally crossing paths and seeing a great demonstration for how Steve would play out was a real delight to watch. It was certainly an unforgettable moment in time, and it makes for a fun addition to the Smash roster. I couldn't really make this a top 10 since the list of choices was so narrow, but I figured it would only be fair to pay respect to reveals that were fun to watch, even if they're not top 5 material. Min Min, a fun trailer that pays great respect for the ARMS series. Its intense action, smooth pace, and funny sense of humor makes for a cool reveal. Kazuya, the devil-blooded fighter from Tekken, makes a striking appearance. This reveal really shows off how intimidating he is, with the ominous atmosphere accompanied by him throwing numerous fighters to their deaths. The awesomeness is only made better by the amazing metal cover of his iconic theme, topped with a humorous exchange with Kirby. It seems not even the devil can stop that adorable puffball. Isabelle, everyone's favorite assistant from Animal Crossing. It was a great treat to see she was going to be her own individual fighter instead of an echo for the villager, and the build-up to the reveal is just really charming. Just seeing her tending to the office before getting the exciting news. It's cute, fun, and a nice reveal for Isabelle in Smash, making her the only fighter I feel bad about beating up. Sans as a Mii fighter. I might be cheating on this one a bit, but it does deserve to be brought up for just how widespread the reveal is. Sans in Smash Ultimate is by far the most viewed trailer of all the reveals, even beating out the Steve trailer. It really shows just how massive the Undertale phenomenon is. While he's not an official fighter, it was nice for Sakurai to find a way to include him in the roster. And finally, Ridley, Samus's arch-nemesis from the Metroid series. Of all the reveals, this one is the most terrifying, though that's what makes it fun to watch. It really captures just how ruthless and threatening Ridley is, perfectly portraying him as a merciless killer. The ominous atmosphere only further adds to the tension, making it a worthy honorable mention. And now, it's time for the number 1 reveal. Don't be surprised, you had to know this one was coming. Sora's inclusion in Smash after years and years and years of people asking for him was a groundbreaking moment in video game history. There's a lot of factors that contribute to this being the best reveal, but it's only fair to start with the reveal itself. It starts with a dark, empty void of nothingness, where all the fighters are in trophy form. An ominous chant of the game's theme sounds in the background, as the flickering fire of the Smash icon slowly dies out. A moment of silence passes, as the camera focuses on the ambience of the fighters standing lifeless in their trophy forms. Then, it focuses on Mario. He slowly opens his eyes to see a single flame of the logo still burning strong. Hesitantly, he breaks free from his trophy form and cautiously approaches the fire. What could it be? What does this mean? What is this strange feeling of uncertainty? All these questions circle in Mario's head as he stares at this mysterious fire. But in spite of it, he reaches forward, grabbing the fire as it takes the form of a mysterious weapon. He throws it into the darkness, its form slowly peeking through. Suddenly, it stops in midair, revealing...
On my phone! My plane has Wi-Fi!
It fires a ray of light, revealing a keyhole-shaped portal. The rest of the fighters awaken from their sleep, as that iconic orchestra starts to play, and the iconic character floats out of the portal. He opens his eyes and cheerfully flies across the room. The music picks up as he eventually makes his way down. Calling the Keyblade to his hand, Sora readies himself for battle. We get a demonstration for how his gameplay from the original game is adapted, with an exciting demonstration of both Hollow Bastion and Dive to the Heart. And just before it ends, we get a handshake between Sora and Mario, congratulating him for finally making it into Smash, signaling the end of an era for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. This reveal is perfect, not just because of the inclusion of Sora, but for how it all plays out. The suspense and tension draw you in as it takes its time building up to the reveal. The atmosphere is ominous, with mystery and anticipation overwhelming you as you watch, and its shift into a more lighthearted and whimsical tone is timed just right. And the images of Mario wielding a Keyblade and shaking hands with Sora is so bizarre and yet such a welcome sight. And the way this presentation is paced out is great. Sakurai was setting this up like he knew people would be overjoyed to see that Sora would actually end up getting in. And the way they reveal him is done with so much grace and respect for Kingdom Hearts fans that you can't help but feel happy just by watching it. But what makes this even more significant is what it means for Smash as a whole. Sora's reveal is proof that anyone can make it into Smash, no matter how unlikely it may seem. With everyone saying how much Sora getting in was wishful thinking due to Smash Ultimate already having 3 Square Enix characters, not to mention Sora being co-owned by Disney, it was not only a great surprise but also an amazing feat that Sora could make it in. The fact that Disney allowed that very visible image of Mickey Mouse at the end of Sora's Keyblade to make it into the game is a miracle in and of itself. It exceeds what everyone thought was possible, and how Sakurai and his team can meet just about any challenge that comes their way. There's a sense of wonderment to this reveal that can be seen from the millions of passionate reactions to his inclusion, and it was a feeling that put a smile on everyone's face. For all these reasons, it only makes sense for Sora to be the number 1 reveal for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and the perfect pick for the final DLC fighter for one of the most ambitious video games of all time. Fuck the Pokémon anime. It's a shitty show for kindergarteners, and knowing that I've wasted so many years of my life on it just makes me feel bad for myself. Now, this isn't an anti-Pokémon video. I think Pokémon is awesome. I love the games, the action figures, the toys, the plushies, the card game, okay, maybe not the card game, the cosplayers, the fan art, you name it. But the Pokémon anime is like the Call of Duty of television shows.
doing the exact same identical things every single season and not adding anything new to the overall formula. I know it's kind of dumb that it took me this long to realize it, but I really have come to learn just how shitty, horrendous, and how much of a waste of time the Pokémon anime truly is. I don't care how many fans I'm pissing off at the moment as I say this, but by God, it is truly a fucking awful show. The Pokémon anime is a vile and pathetic excuse for a show based on a video game. It has proven to its audience, or to put it more accurately, it proved to its audience a long time ago that it does not care at all about Ash's growth as a Pokémon trainer, or the relationships between any of the characters, and exists just to promote and advertise whatever new games and products the Pokémon company comes up with. Ash losing the Kalos League is just the latest in a string of examples. I would really love to go into much more detail on each and every single one of those things that I just listed above, and I'm sure there's much more wrong with the Pokémon anime than what I just listed, but at this point, I just feel like I'd be wasting my time. And if the show isn't even going to try at this point, why should I devote my time to writing fanfictions about a show that has all but presented itself as a sellout? I mean, really think about the other anime based on products we may have grown up with, like Digimon for example. That shit was amazing when it first came out, and it still holds up today. Why? Because it actually cared about telling a story with the source material. You know what? The Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, despite its flaws, is a better anime adaptation than the Pokémon anime, because at least they didn't do the exact same thing every fucking season. So yeah, you see where I'm going with this. I've dropped out of the Pokémon anime because it has shown me that it refuses to do more than just build Ash up throughout an entire arc just to make him lose at the very end for a bullshit reason. And besides that, I've got stuff going on in my life now, so even if I wanted to resume these fanfictions, I wouldn't have been able to, but it doesn't change the fact that I wouldn't even have wanted to. Between suing my shitty high school for all of the emotional damage it caused me, my production as a YouTube content creator, and the friendships I've been developing in the Brony community, I have more important things to worry about than writing fanfiction for a shitty anime that I really don't care for anymore. Only the most die-hard of Pokémon fans at this point will really care about the misadventures of how Ash never becomes a Pokémon master, and I won't let it bother me. So if by the end of all this you still want to watch this shitty, waste of time, lazy, sorry excuse for an anime, that's cool. I really don't have the power to control what you're going to watch in your spare time, and I really don't have the right to take that away from you. However, if you're one of those people that's going to start spamming in the comments section about how I suck and about how I'm horrible just because I'm bashing on something that you grew up with in your childhood and nostalgia, don't bother, because nothing you type in the below comment section is going to change how I feel about this completely crappy and fucking pointless excuse for a television series. And for all the people who have ever had anything to do with this show, whether it's the production or the directing or the writing or otherwise, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Because you have wasted your talent as entertainers by providing us with one of the most shitty, most horrendous, most pathetic, most poorly written Japanese cartoons I have ever seen in my life. Fuck the Pokémon anime. Finn.
I'm not entirely sure if I've talked about this before, but it should be said that nostalgia is a really powerful feeling. It causes people to become overly attached to something against their better judgment. Regardless if it's good or bad, nostalgia overtakes us with reminders of a simpler time in our lives, when the world felt simpler and less complicated, making us want to escape back into the innocence of childhood and keep our minds off the struggles of adulthood. It's almost like going back in time in some way, where our brains are capable of recollecting and saving information from decades ago. In a way, it's a really fascinating thing to ponder about, in spite of the setbacks that come with it. It can be a great feeling, but it can also be bittersweet. When you have a certain feeling that something in your life is missing. It was there for so long, and then all of a sudden, it's just gone. And I can't believe I'm about to say this, but this is how I feel about Ash Ketchum in the Pokémon anime. For those who may not know, I made some statements in the past speaking of my disapproval of the show. One in particular being a video I made several years ago following his loss in the Kalos League. There's things in the video I said that I still stand by, but it definitely comes across as stated as there's several things that were not worded properly. I never really thought of it as one of my better videos. It was just something I put together as soon as I saw Ash losing the Kalos League. With that said, my relationship with the show is still complicated if that's the right word to use. The majority of the series is really dated. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. It had a really repetitive formula where everything was constantly being reset back to the status quo. There's a ton of assholes and things that make no sense or didn't properly connect with the games. The writers kept coming up with horrible reasons for Ash losing a league that he clearly should have won, with the only one not being total bullshit being his loss at the Hoenn League. A lot of the characters were one-note and generic and lacking interesting personality. The stories were badly paced as a result of the unbelievable abundance of filler episodes. A lot of the episodes served no purpose except to advertise something from the current gen game without doing anything to further the story. It constantly ran on the unbelievable plot point that the characters never age over the course of the show's 25-year run, making it feel like a zombie of itself like The Simpsons or Family Guy. There's almost no real character growth or development for the main character because the writers need to abuse the reset button and just have him go right back to where he started, to the point that the one-shot characters had more development and a more focused character arc than Ash over the course of 25 years. It's not that the show was horrible or even that bad, but it's still really dull. And for the longest time, people just wanted Ash's story to have a proper end instead of being needlessly dragged out. Let him win, let him become a Pokémon master. Let him achieve something so we can focus on a new character. It seemed like something that was never going to happen with how set the staff was on keeping Ash a 10-year-old kid forever and using him as a mascot for the series. That is until it was announced in December 2022 that after 25 years, Ash Ketchum's story was finally coming to an end. Even now, I'm still having a hard time processing it. It feels surreal that this is actually happening. I never thought it'd be possible, and yet here we are. The final episode of Ash Ketchum's story. Honestly, I can't help but feel puzzled about it. I spent so long wanting the show to end that I never planned on how I would react or how I would feel about it in the event that it actually does end. And now it comes across as a bittersweet victory. This is what I wanted after all, so why isn't it fully satisfying? Is it possible that even after all this time I still have some sort of attachment to this character? And this is where the nostalgia kicks in. I've never really talked about it before, but in spite of my occasional jabs at the Pokémon anime, it was my first major exposure to pop culture. Pokémon was my first real obsession, before things like The Simpsons, SpongeBob SquarePants, My Little Pony, and even Kingdom Hearts. It was the first piece of media that I developed a real connection with, and in some ways it helped shape who I became as a person, someone with a love for stories that take place in a fantasy world. Adventures about traveling across far-off places, striving towards meeting a goal, something that gives our life purpose and meaning, forming bonds with different people from different walks of life, discovering new things about the world we live in, following our dreams no matter how unrealistic they may seem. It's a magical feeling that captivates us when we're young and naive, resulting in us making attachments to things within a fictional world. And this was something that, as a kid, I felt was perfectly embodied by the adventures of Ash Ketchum, a boy who left his hometown to follow his dream of becoming a Pokémon master. I was actually there since the very beginning, from the moment that promotional VHS of the show was released, and I was one of the lucky few to own a copy of that special VHS. And soon after, I was pretty much part of the ride for as long as I can remember. I was there for almost every single episode of the show, whether it was broadcasted on Kids WB or Cartoon Network. I was there when the movies came out, and I would ask my parents over and over until they took me to see them. Whenever I played the games, I would base my team on Ash's Pokémon for each region. I collected the VHSs, the DVDs, collected the plushies and toys, and at the peak of YouTube, I was watching the Japanese dub straight from Japan. I'd even go so far as to say there were moments in the show that made me cry. Ash releasing Butterfree, Ash deciding to leave Pikachu with his own kind before Pikachu chose to stay with him, Ash's death in the first movie, Celebi's death in the fourth movie, Jessie, James, and Meowth releasing Arbok and Weezing, or Ash parting ways with Brock and Misty. There were moments in the show that filled me with joy, like seeing Ash winning his matches during each league, Ash getting a new Pokemon, Ash defeating his rivals after struggling with them throughout the region, Team Rocket being the best characters in the show. There was actually a lot of things in the show that I liked. I practically made it an unbreakable tradition to watch each new episode on Saturday mornings, and to see episodes of Pokemon playing on TV after school. The Pokemon anime was something that I was incredibly obsessed with, but then all of a sudden that obsession just stopped. Completely. I found myself less interested in keeping up with the story or religiously watching every episode and movie, mostly at some point during the Diamond and Pearl saga, which dragged on for way longer than it had to. Then came the Unova saga, where the show really took a nosedive in quality. And then came the Kalos League, where after Ash lost that one, I just stopped keeping up with the show entirely. This is when I was well into my adult years and had to grow out of some things I watched as a kid, developing new interests, finding new things to enjoy, focusing on other aspects of my life. And somewhere in the middle of that, I guess my Pokemon obsession just progressively slipped away. Around the peak of my disinterest, I was wondering what could have caused something that played such a huge role in my life suddenly no longer seem like a big deal. And after going over it, I figured out the elements that made me lose interest in Pokemon: tedium and repetitivity. Much like The Simpsons, SpongeBob SquarePants, and Family Guy, there comes a time when a story feels like it's been going on way too long, especially if it's a weekly television show. By the time I lost most of my interest in Pokemon, it was already on for over 20 years, and yet it was still going. Still focusing on Ash Ketchum trying to become a Pokemon master almost as if he hadn't accomplished anything since 1997. A show can only go on for so long before you inevitably lose interest in it, and I guess that's what happened with me and Pokemon. But aside from going on for so long, I came to realize how incessant it was in its dull formula and constantly resetting everything back to the status quo. And after seeing them do the exact same thing over and over for so long, it just got so boring. At this point, it was made clear that the company just wanted to keep Ash around because they wanted to keep the Pokemon brand marketable, not because they actually care about giving people a compelling protagonist who actually makes progress and gets closer to reaching his goal. Around the time Ash was going through Kalos, I had already gotten into a variety of other shows, each with a much better sense of writing and progress than Pokemon, and then I thought to myself, why invest any more of my time in this one show that's clearly run out of steam when I could be investing time in stuff that's much more interesting and relatable? And it's here where the main difference between my experience with Pokemon as a kid and watching it as an adult really started to kick in. Because when you're a kid, you don't really have the ability to look at something with a critical lens. Your brain hasn't developed to the point where you can really think or process the content you're watching. As a kid, Pokemon was just this piece of escapism where I could live out certain fantasies and adventures in my head by just seeing it happen to fictional characters on screen. That or trying to take my mind off things that were causing me stress like school or other things. Granted, I was able to find myself empathizing with these characters, but there was really nothing I could do except react to what I was seeing. It was back when I had a simple and innocent yet naive view of media. I just wanted to have fun and not really think about it. But around the peak of YouTube, when people were getting into analysis culture and media critique, I admit I started adopting new ideas on how to view something, and how I would think about the stuff I watched or interacted with. And I guess that sort of had an effect on my relationship with Pokemon. I do still have fond memories of watching it as a kid, as they are happy memories, but it was just something I grew out of and had to move on from. It just felt like there was no point in sticking around if I wasn't getting any satisfying payoff for the time I was putting in this show. I would go on to comment on the show a few more times, such as in my review of Trump Guy, where I talk about the importance of not letting something go on for too long and giving it a satisfying conclusion. But little did I know that in a few years' time, I was going to get just what I wished for. It was only recently when the story of Ash Ketchum aired its final episode in Japan. But now that it's actually over, and after seeing the community's widespread reaction to it, I can't help but feel like there's something missing in my life. But why? This is pretty much what I was asking for the Pokemon anime to give Ash a satisfying conclusion and to let him retire as the protagonist. I mean, they actually allowed him to win. He finally obtained a major victory by becoming a Pokemon champion. It's a sensible time for his story to come to an end because there's really nothing else they can do with him at this point. And yet somehow I felt that wave of nostalgia hitting me when I first heard the news that his story was ending. It even compelled me to start faving a bunch of Ash Ketchum related Pokemon fan art on DeviantArt. I started reliving all those memories I had watching Ash's story unfold in my mind. All the highs, all the lows, all the victories and failures, all the friends and companions he made. This kid is only 10 years old and he's strangely enough accomplished more than most people could ever hope to in their lives. And in the end, he finally came out on top. Knowing that he's achieved his goal after working towards it for so long is really uplifting to hear about. I actually felt happy for Ash and felt like congratulating him. All those childhood memories, all that time I invested in the Pokemon anime, it was finally given a satisfying payoff. Ash achieved his goal. He became a Pokemon master. And as happy as I am to see him win, I'm also feeling just as bittersweet and kind of sad about seeing him go. And I'm not alone in feeling this way. There's been a large, sweeping, and highly vocal declaration of how sad people are to see Ash go. So many people, from those who were there from the beginning to those who joined a couple of years ago. The internet is flooded with people saying goodbye to Ash and feeling the nostalgia that came to us as his tale was done. And after seeing so many different people coming together to bid him farewell, it helped me to understand why I felt the way I did. A clear explanation for this bittersweet feeling I had about Ash's story ending. For the longest time, as long as I can remember being sentient, Ash Ketchum was the oldest constant in my entire life. Pokemon was the first real obsession I had as a kid, and Ash Ketchum was my introduction to Pokemon. So much so that I spent hours and hours building up all of my Pokemon teams to be like his while playing the games. I even think of Pikachu as my main fighter over Sora in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. That's how much of an impact Pokemon had on me, and it was all thanks in part to this one kid. I recently watched a video uploaded by Solid J entitled Ash Says Goodbye. And while he's well known for his parody and satire, this particular video hit very differently. It actually took the time to be serious and address how so many people felt about the idea of Ash departing from the show. And this one line from Professor Oak perfectly says it all.
I don't know what to tell you, Ash, alright? I mean, I'm disappointed just as you are. But what are you gonna do? It's over. This is the end. There's nowhere to go from here. I think it's a beautiful thing, Ash. Now you have the time to reflect. Appreciate the life that you've lived. You've touched so many lives. All with just your one.
It's true. Ash did touch a lot of lives with his own. He touched entire generations of people around the world. From the kids of the 90s to the current era, Ash was a defining element that personified everyone's childhood. And it can also apply to the show itself, as Ash came across so many different characters and made a difference in their lives. From his friends to his rivals to his Pokemon to the legendary Pokemon to the one-shot characters he'd come across. Ash has had such a huge impact on the world of Pokemon that even he might not fully grasp. This makes me realize how much of a big hit it is knowing that Ash isn't going to be there anymore. He was always there doing his thing, and now he's just gone. It's something that gives me goosebumps and makes me feel sort of existential. I'll admit, waking up early on Saturday mornings to see what was next for Ash and seeing where his adventure would take him next was a real thrill as a kid. Collecting the toys, reading the books, watching the movies in theaters, building my Pokemon teams in the games after him, it was the earliest memories of childhood I can think of. In spite of my criticisms of the show, the fact is, I grew up with Ash. He was literally a part of my life for 25 years, and now that he's being retired, it feels somber. I crapped on him often in the past, and yet I'm really gonna miss him. It makes me reflect on how much we grew up with Ash over the years, and how we were part of his journey all along. The story of an adventurous kid who got to explore the world, meet new people, and see wonders that he could only dream of. Getting to look out at the stars every night, and waking up to a bright day as he approached his destination. We've all dreamed of having that sort of freedom in our lives, and Ash got to experience all of it. And we got to join him in all those experiences, sharing in all the great things that can be found in the world of Pokemon. We all dream of leaving home and traveling the world, and by watching over Ash as long as we did, we got a pretty good idea of what that dream is like. But I think the most important thing about the ending of Pokemon and how it ended with Ash becoming a champion is what it means for his character after all the years he spent struggling for that victory. In spite of the many times he would fail, he'd always get back up and try again. He never gave up and kept pushing himself forward. We all thought that Ash would never win something this big, but after such a long time, having him win sends another important message. No matter how long it takes, no matter how many setbacks and defeats you find, if you keep trying and learning, you'll eventually reach your goal. He finally achieved his dream that he worked so hard for without letting his failures discourage him. It's a happy ending for his character, and it also teaches a valuable lesson to the audience, to just keep working hard and do your best, because eventually it'll be worth it. I guess it goes to show that there's more than one way of growing up outside of aging. He grew up through his experience and progress as a trainer. He started as an ignorant rookie, and now he's a champion. If you traveled back in time to about 5 to 10 years ago and said that Ash would become a Pokemon master, I would have laughed in your face. That's how surreal it is that Ash actually made it. I hated how Ash was never allowed to grow or mature or get closer to his goal. It just became so redundant seeing him do the exact same thing over and over for years while never actually getting anywhere. but I still can't deny he was literally my entry into an entire franchise. And with the games getting worse, he was literally my last attachment to the series. Ash Ketchum was a significant part of my life. I spent my entire childhood and some of my adult years growing up with this kid, so now that he's leaving, it actually hits me a lot different than I thought it would. This isn't the end of Pokémon. It's making way too much money for Nintendo to drop it. But this is the end of Ash Ketchum, and after everything he's been through, he's earned a good rest. I'm honestly kinda shaking my head at how foolish I was back then, acting all cynical towards Ash and convincing myself he'd always be a loser. Because now, I see him as a winner, an inspiration, and an amazing role model for people to take after. And in a way, I suppose that's the legacy of Ash Ketchum. A cartoon character who can live on in the hearts of millions of people around the world after all these years. How he manages to stick with you even after you stopped watching the show for so long. And I think that's what the final 11 episodes represents. A celebration of Ash's journey and how he stuck around as long as he did. And the impact he had on so many lives. It still feels so unreal to me. I still remember being in school speeding through my homework so I can watch more Pokémon episodes. It was something that I loved for so long. Ash and Pikachu was literally the first thing you think about when Pokémon comes to mind. And now that they're gone, it's gonna feel so weird. I don't even remember the last time I even watched the show. But it's still so crazy that we even got to this point. For those who don't know, the original writer of the show, Takashi Shudo, died before he can see the end of the anime. He originally wanted to end Ash's story around when Gen 3 was coming out and start with a new character, but they didn't let him because they wanted to keep telling this story. He quit around the third movie but was never able to truly let go of the franchise. I think now he can finally rest in peace knowing that they actually cared to move on from Ash's story. Even if this is the end, it won't take away from the impact Ash had. All the fun memories of playing the games and watching the anime will always be with me. And that means a great deal to me that I can never fully describe with words. In the end, Ash taught us one of the most important lessons of all. Anyone can go on their own personal adventure, to experience great things and meet people and explore the world. It's just a matter of taking those first steps. And it wasn't just told to us, it was shown to us. Through Ash Ketchum's 25-year-long journey. It might not be enough to fully reignite my dedication to Pokémon, but I still have to commemorate what Ash achieved. It actually makes me feel proud of the time I spent with him, and to think that there's millions around the world sharing in that pride with me is definitely a legacy worth celebrating. So long, Ash Ketchum. You kept going the distance and reached your goal. You actually made it, fulfilling your dream of becoming a Pokémon master, and that's something I can deeply respect. This may be the end of your story, but the effect you made will last forever.
So, this video, Doug Walker's Nostalgia Critic 10th Anniversary Special. How can one possibly describe how horrendously awful it is? But I'm guessing not too many people would even want to, considering how anyone who dares say anything bad about Doug Walker these days is immediately attacked by his annoying fans. Now keep in mind that I just made an update video about how I've got a lot to do in the coming months, and I'm gonna be really busy with future videos, so I'm gonna try to keep this brief. I should probably start by saying that I do not like Doug Walker. He is not a good reviewer. The vast majority of his content is based around comedy, and his brand of humor really isn't that creative or unique. It's quite repetitive, and looking back at his early work, it certainly didn't age very well. Even putting that aside, he's a horrible film analyzer. In all of his reviews I've seen, he's come across as uninformed, unfocused, hypocritical, or some combination of the three. And it's really gotten worse with each passing year. But enough about that. This is going to focus on his review on Norm of the North, which he dedicated his 10-year anniversary to. The first thing that I want to say is that it just feels like a missed opportunity. I mean, I understand wanting to do a review of Norm of the North, but why make it the focus of your 10-year anniversary? There's nothing really special about it. In fact, why didn't he review the original Transformers movie? It was the first video that he ever made, so it would have had some kind of poetic feel to it. Not to mention that he just predicted Transformers 5 flawlessly. There's a lot of potential behind this. He could have made a review about the good old days of seeing Transformers for the first time, comparing it to later day Transformers, talking about the passage of time, how 10 years of doing this has had an effect on him. reliving his nostalgia, which you think he would do considering his name is Nostalgia Critic. But nope, we don't get any of this. Instead, we just get a lazily put together quote-unquote analysis on Norm of the North that even the mysterious Mr. Enter did a better job at. The first problem with this episode of the Nostalgia Critic is the sense of humor. These aren't the worst jokes that he's made by any means, but they're still not good. The jokes in this episode are just not funny on any level. They come across as stale and badly timed, and it doesn't feel like Doug is putting enough energy into them. And that's putting aside the fact that they just feel incredibly lazy. All of the jokes feel like they were thought up in a couple of seconds and Doug just pasted them into the script, without putting more thinking into them. How they could be more effective, more funny, how they could better fit into the review without breaking up the flow of the pacing. Even if Doug is somehow trying harder than he actually is, the jokes are just too predictable. It's easy to tell which brands of humor and what jokes he's going for, even as someone who has loosely seen footage of this movie. This makes the punchlines feel like white noise, and a lot of the other jokes are just something that he says randomly, and he thinks that saying it in a shrill, screeching voice while putting on a dumb face will somehow make it funny, which it does not. Another problem with the episode is the sketches, where instead of cutting away for a few seconds to make a joke revolving around the movie, he completely derails the entire video by dedicating entire minutes to his personal comedic writing. I can understand the opening where he pretends to be Aang, even though it's clearly not funny, but it does serve as a means to set up the review. But the other sketches in this video are horrendous. At one point he starts calling out Bill, and then it just drags on and on and on about how he seems to have disappeared. And the punchline is that Bill just shows up, and they do a stupid dance. What really bothers me about this sketch is that it literally comes out of nowhere and it has no connection with the rest of the video at all, or even the review of the movie itself. It's only there because Doug thought it would be funny, and that's not good for a movie review of any kind. The jokes have to be built around the movie itself, not your shitty demo reel throwaway gags. And the second sketch that he does is that of the Talent Replacer 9000. It may be related to the film review, but considering how badly paced and how irrelevant it feels, I'm just gonna label it as another one of his failed sketches. They don't even say anything funny, they just say exactly what you think they're going to say, which again ruins the punchline that they're going for. And they seem to think that quoting South Park gives the joke more credibility when it really doesn't. This problem is unfortunately not exclusive to this episode. After Doug brought back the Nostalgia Critic, we've been getting more and more jokes like this, where Doug detracts from the review to ham-fist his personal shitty comedic writing into his audience's face, where he spends too much time making sketches and cutaways and losing focus on the review. It always ends up being poorly paced, and it just feels like Doug is coming up with excuses to make the video longer than it should be. The result is that they end up overstaying their welcome, and they become annoying and boring. What's especially horrible is how some of these jokes he's going for make absolutely no sense, and he ends up shooting himself in the foot. Take this for example.
Yeah, he wasn't asked, they weren't talking about it, he just kind of randomly starts doing it. It just comes right the hell out of nowhere, and suddenly, we're in a musical. It's like if in the middle of this review, I suddenly started dancing. Do the Bill dance!
And several minutes after that,
It's like Groundhog Day, except instead of watching Bill Murray, we're watching Rob Schneider. Instead of watching Bill Murray, we're watching Rob Schneider! No! It's like if in the middle of this review, I suddenly started dancing.
if this is Doug's way of adding irony into his jokes, he's not good at it. It only further proves how poorly paced the video is. And this episode is not just poorly paced, it's really, really badly paced. Something that I noticed the second time watching this is how very little Doug actually analyzes the plot of the movie itself. And that mostly stems from how he's just stuck in the first 25 minutes of the movie. I mean, nearly halfway through this video, he's still in the first act of the film. And considering that the last 4 minutes is dedicated to recap and a charity shoutout, it's basically telling me that he spends the majority of the review making jokes about one portion of the film, which gives him very little time left. As a matter of fact, he doesn't even analyze the first act that he spends all of his time on. He honestly had to make a pointless Bill sketch and fill the first 14 minutes telling ineffective jokes. How can he even call this a review if he doesn't even review the movie? He doesn't analyze the flaws in the story or what makes the character so horrible on any informative level. Other reviews of this movie that I've seen from other YouTubers, Black Critic Guy, Cellspecs, Chris Stuckman, Electric Dragon 505, Cinematic Excrement Smeghead, all of them managed to properly analyze the plot, the characters, and the story when Doug himself couldn't, and they did it with less time. How do you even fuck that up? I know that your main focus is to tell jokes, but you're still a reviewer, and as such, you can't just throw your analysis on the film out like that completely. And it's really, really, really cringy the way that Doug just focuses on the pissing lemmings. In fact, he focuses on them more than the film itself. He says that the scene is only 30 seconds long, and he plays it on loop for over a minute. For God's sake, the audio even plays during the transition to the commercial card, and it continues to play when we come back from the commercial. If he really thinks that no one would want to listen to this, why is he forcing us to listen to it? It's just a disgusting sound, and he doesn't do anything or add anything to make it funny or endearing. He just shows us the scene and lets it sit there like an old man waiting to get his flu shot. And he does this again almost immediately after, only this time he holds onto that stupid face while making us listen to the pissing audio. And let me tell you, that image and that sound should never be experienced together by any mortal man. And then he has to repeat this joke during the part where the lemmings flatulate. Granted that he doesn't really focus too much on this one, but it's still a rendition of a joke that wasn't funny the first time, and this is his third time doing it. Restating your jokes like this kills the flow of your video. But all of that just leads up to the worst thing about this 10-year anniversary special. It feels nothing at all like a 10th anniversary special. There's no scene where Doug reflects on his life since becoming Nostalgia Critic, no reference to his earlier days of the show. They just briefly stick the words 10 years on the title sequence, and that's it. You know what? This was just sad. Not only was this episode of Nostalgia Critic void of humor and a horribly paced review, not to mention that he barely reviews the movie on any level, but it doesn't even succeed as an anniversary special. There's nothing special about it in any way. It's just like every other modern episode of Nostalgia Critic, and they briefly plastered 10-year anniversary on it. Everything about this video is a missed opportunity because Doug wanted to be lazy and just make more crappy jokes. Even for a show that got so bad over the years, I thought there would be at least something put into it to make this feel different from other episodes. But Doug just couldn't pull it off. He really doesn't give a shit anymore, does he? 10 years of the Nostalgia Critic, and this was seriously the best that he could come up with. I can't even call this pathetic, it's just sad and desperate. For what it's worth, I do feel bad for Tamra and Malcolm. Knowing that they have to work with Doug Walker's repetitive shtick must be really tiring on them. Even in this episode, they look and act like they're just completely tired of his shit. In all of their appearances, they really do look like they're trying their best to entertain the audience, but the material that Doug provides for them just gives them very little to work with. Whatever Nicole is doing right now, I'm pretty sure that she's doing a lot better than Doug, which is good for her because in my case, she really dodged a bullet when she left the show. This is seriously one of the worst episodes of the Nostalgia Critic by far, and I mean that on an objective level. It's badly paced, the humor is ineffective, it doesn't properly break down the film it's focusing on, and for a 10-year anniversary, it feels nothing at all like a special anniversary episode. And yet Doug Walker's fans are just eating it up and praising it regardless. It's probably just me, but these days they'll praise just about any mundane thing that Doug Walker does for no other reason than just he's Doug Walker and he can do no wrong. Honestly, at this point Doug's fans could watch him taking a dump and they'll still applaud it. Oh wait, that already happened. Never mind.